says, "Oh, it's too expensive and all that." Yeah, but it's a price you pay for convenience.
All right, and with that, we are live hearing the end of Chris's comments about DoorDash. And yes, we're live. I'm not on the camera because I figured out that it's the source of the issues that I keep having because I'm not getting like any packet drops or anything like that. There are good speeds or everything else. It's the camera, so I got to get a new one, which probably means it's going to have to wait until after Christmas. So,
Hmm.
but we got Scarface and Darth Vega with us. How you doing, guys?
Okay. Eh,
Doing well.
And Operation Omniverse is first in the chat. How you doing, Omni? And we'll see who joins. Yeah, I mean, I did DoorDash some like when I had COVID and stuff like that. It's just too expensive to do all the time.
yeah, I know. I mean, the reason I use it a lot though is because I work a lot. I'm away at work a lot, and while our store does have, and while the place I work at does have a employee kitchen where they got meals and all that, it's mostly just junk food and you know
Yeah. And by the time you go out and get something and bring it back, your lunch break's over.
yeah,
I know
yeah.
how that is.
I'm not the only one that does it. A lot of people do it too at work. We admit it. It's very expensive, and it's going to cost you $30 just to get a cheeseburger and a soda. But like I was saying, it's
If
the
I'm going
price
to
you pay
spend
for
that, I'm
convenience.
going to get more in the cheeseburger and the soda.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Not to mention you can order from restaurants. That I genuinely like and would like to eat. On occasion. The problem is that they're just too damn far away.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Is anyone else in the chat? Am I stuck? I'm only seeing Omni right now.
Uh, Gizm's here, and so someone called
Uh,
Crod.
hang on. I got it. Hey, Daniel. Oh, okay, now it's catching up.
Hey,
Oh.
hey there. How you doing?
Yay, it's not just gonna be me and Shane and occasionally Vega now.
I'm still trying to get oh, sorry.
Yeah, there's an echo. Fourth Root's online, but I don't know if he's going to join us or not.
I'm still trying to get some things set up for something special with my counselor, so
Mm.
what's everyone's thoughts on Melee?
On what?
Melee.
Javier Milei, the guy that got elected in
Oh,
Argentina.
the new Argentinian guy.
I mean, everyone's like talking about him and praising him and saying this is great. And I don't know anything about him, but that kind of makes me a little uncomfortable because it seems like every time someone says something like that, uh, there turns out to be a catch, and the guy's not all that great after all, and he ends up making us look bad. So hopefully
Well,
that's not the case with this guy.
And to be fair, let's be real here. Even if he is genuine and he's a genuine libertarian, from what I understand, South America, it has the same problem as the United States, but 10 times worse. It's corrupt AF, and if you genuinely try to reform something, they're either going to corrupt you or they're going to kick you out.
And don't think the CIA won't be involved in that.
Mm.
Confessions of an Economic Hitman is a very scary read.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, contrary to popular belief, wasn't the guy we kicked out of Guatemala, wasn't he actually a capitalist? He wasn't a communist?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
That I don't know if it was Guatemala or something, but he was but there was a leader that took place, and he wanted to end U.S. corporate monopolies and all that. So they accused him of being a communist, and they kicked him out. But it actually later turned out he was actually pro-capitalism, and he was actually trying to establish a free market.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, to be fair though, when you study the history of the Cold War, contrary to what you think, it's not capitalism versus communism, democracy versus dictatorship. It was just Russian government versus U.S. government.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that
If I mean,
sounds about right.
because I mean, if I recall correctly, we actually supported some socialist and communist governments during the Cold War simply because while they were communists, they didn't like the Soviets.
Yeah.
I gotta check on something real quick. Hopefully I'll be back in a few minutes.
All right.
Hmm.
And
So Daniel,
hopefully, I don't know if my chat's frozen again or not.
Daniel, did you see the new South Park episode?
We haven't seen that
No,
yet,
I
Um,
haven't.
so
um,
no spoilers.
oh, yeah. Enter the Panderverse. It's kind of funny.
I hear it's got great representation.
Yeah. Yeah, Mom, I had that same nightmare again. What, honey? I had that nightmare that Kathleen Kennedy erased me and replaced me with a lesbian woman of color.
I've seen the memes of it, but
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Honestly, I don't give a crap about the whole identity politics thing. I just hate Kathleen Kennedy because I can't forgive her for letting Disney destroy the original expanded universe of Star Wars.
Same.
Yeah, Daniel Razorfist did a really funny video on it, where he was reading Kathleen Kennedy, and Kathleen Kennedy was like, well, we don't have any stories and all that. We're starting Star Wars from the ground up.
The
And he's like,
no source material quote.
yeah, the no source material. He's like, gee, I don't know. It's not like we have, I don't know, 30 plus years of books, video games, and comics we can look at. Oh, wait a minute. You did, and you said, yeah, that's not canon anymore.
Yeah, we were making fun of that no source material gap for ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think I know.
And then
There's actually an interesting.
Someone had used the excuse at Disney about why the latest trilogy was so bad, and they said, well, there's not really a lot of material to build on. Well, because you kicked it all out.
Yep. By the way, I don't know if it's true or not, but I have heard rumors from inside the reason why the original expanded universe was canned wasn't because, of laziness or trying to do that. It's basically because Disney bought Star Wars mainly because they wanted the name, They didn't actually want to continue the story or the series. They just wanted the name.
Hey, if Doctor Who's TV series can do a televised version of Beep the Meep, I think Disney can do the rest of it. That was funny yesterday.
Speaking of Doctor Who, I heard David Tennant temporarily returned as the Doctor.
Oh yeah, for the next 3 episodes, the one yesterday and then the next 2.
Yeah.
And Catherine Tate back as Donna Noble.
Oh, Donna's back?
Yep.
And then the 15th Doctor is gonna be black.
Ncuti Gatwa.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care,
the
really.
third Scottish Doctor, unless you count Tennant, because he didn't play the Doctor as Scottish.
Yeah.
Yeah, David Tennant's the 14th Doctor, and Ncuti Gatwa's the 15th.
Yeah.
Huh.
He's the guy. He's one of the guys from Sex Education.
I mean, to be fair, I honestly don't mind, if the Doctor's black, because the Doctor has stated in previous, episodes that in theory he can come back as any racial color and all that.
Oh yeah, he can come back as anything. Any race, any number of heads or whatever.
Yeah. I know that's what the Ninth Doctor said. It's like, he says it's so fascinating. You might come back as 2-head. I do have one question though. When are they going to cast a ginger as the Doctor? I mean, the Doctor always says he wants to be a ginger.
Yeah. Well,
okay, some things are just too extreme, okay, Chris?
If they had gotten Capaldi about 30 years older, they would have had a ginger Doctor. Because he was ginger back in the day before he went gray.
Is it here?
But unfortunately, they got Capaldi in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
I think though it was clever bringing back Tennant, for the 60th anniversary, because you don't want to try to do a new Doctor while you're doing an anniversary, which is where you
Sorry.
generally bring back past Doctors.
Yeah, maybe that should be a mock, a mock marketing gimmick. Have it where gingers are outraged that the new Doctor's not a ginger. Yeah, he has stated in multiple episodes he wants to be a ginger. Look, I don't care if he's black or a woman again, but make him a ginger.
He's had plenty of ginger companions.
Yeah.
Very first color episode, they give him a ginger companion as soon as it can be. The companion's ginger.
To be fair, though, I don't know if it's true or not, but I have heard that there's been studies done, and gingers do genuinely face some degree of social, bullying and all that.
Oh, my counselor and I talk about that all the time. She's ginger and she gets a crap ton of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it true that you guys don't have souls? You don't show up in mirrors and that the sunlight will kill you? That's vampires, not gingers.
Well, I mean, the sunlight thing.
But the funny
I think
thing is like how many like non-ginger women on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever are making themselves up to look ginger. So people who aren't ginger want to be ginger.
And let's face it, it's a word with an N, two G's, an I, an E, and an R.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it is an anagram, isn't it?
Yeah.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, someone wrote a song about it.
Ism said, speaking of South Park, how has Cartman not been put into juvie at least? He actually was in an old episode, Cartman's Silly Hate Crime.
I just don't know how he avoided it after Scott. Was it Scott Tenorman?
Yeah.
The one he made eat his parents?
Although the Scott Tenorman thing eventually was revealed to have backfired on him in some regard.
And by the way, speaking of South Park and the ginger thing, Trey Parker has admitted publicly that he is racist towards gingers. He actually broke up with an ex-girlfriend because he found out her mom was ginger.
Oh wow.
Can I identify as ginger? Does it work that way?
Probably, but nobody cares.
Yeah, probably.
I'm not gonna lie though, I kind of wish Matt and Trey will get rid of PC Principal. I'm kind of sick of him.
He got played out a long time ago.
And if they are going to keep him around, I think the joke with him should be that, he still thinks he's PC, but it's making fun of the fact that we've moved on and we don't care anymore. So he gives all these orders and everyone's like, yeah, PC Principal, whatever. We just want to come to school to learn. We don't care.
And then it turns out he doesn't know how to be an actual principal. That would be funny.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Or better yet, I know the best way to get rid of PC Principal. Simple. Get him so triggered up that he beats you up, and then take a picture of it, but take it out of context and say PC Principal was violating this child. He'll be canceled right then and there.
Also, why are girls finding queefing so funny?
No clue.
Yeah, I did not like that episode because, and many people have pointed out the reason why the episode Eat Pray Queef doesn't work is because when you think about it, it's kind of stupid because and the joke would have worked better if girls started farting, because
I'm starting to come to the conclusion that they won't admit it, but Girls like fart jokes better than guys do.
Yeah.
If there is a fart joke, my wife is laughing her head off for 5 minutes.
I know you told me a long time ago that when that episode about the retirement home came out, you and your wife watched it and she was laughing because of Miss McGillicuddy and her old lady farts.
Mhm.
She's got those old lady farts, you know, the ones that just slip out and she has no control over.
She had never seen Blazing Saddles before, so I had to rectify that. But at that one scene around the campfire with the beans, I just had the remote handy because I knew I'd have to pause it and just wait.
yeah. That was good. Can I have some more beans? I see you had enough. Sorry if I missed too loud. Yeah. Apparently that was done because they were actually researching, they were actually researching cowboys and all that for the film, and they realized that a common food that a lot of cowboys ate while on the trail was mainly coffee, beans, and bacon, and they were thinking, gee, that's gonna thank God they're sleeping outside.
Yeah, because those are just food.
Wait,
dense foods that you can transport that don't spoil.
Wait, when you say the foods in that order, the syntax gets a little wonky. So maybe like say it beans, coffee, and bacon.
Oh, like coffee, comma, beans and bacon instead of coffee, beans and bacon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because coffee comes from beans. Yeah. Yep. It's like that character from Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Yeah. The men need the 4 basic food groups. I got you 4 basic food groups: beans, bacon, whiskey, and lard. Now, my personal favorite scene from Blazing Saddles is that scene where he tricks everyone. By holding himself hostage. Yeah. The next person that reads the N-word gets it. Oh, please do what he says. He's crazy, man. Shut up. Man, you are so talented. And they are so dumb.
So funny.
Yeah. Don't worry. I set something up back there that'll stall them. Let's go get him, boys. What the? A toll booth?
I haven't
got a dime.
I haven't seen History of the World Part 2 yet. I haven't heard if it's good or not.
Wait, they actually made a part 2?
Yeah, it's like a 6-episode thing on Hulu.
Huh.
I'm still waiting for Spaceballs 2: The Quest for More Money.
Admittedly, making a part 2 seems like it's kind of ruining the joke.
Well, yeah, but Brooks resisted it for what, like 40 years now, and he finally relented and made it. Everyone was always pestering about it. When are you gonna make part 2? When are you gonna make part 2? But yeah, it was a joke because Sir Walter Raleigh was doing his History of the World, and he published volume 1, and he didn't publish any more after that.
Oh yeah.
Super stew is the best food to grace mankind. I mean, it's easy to make and eat. I am not a bean guy.
Me neither. That's why.
Shane, you call yourself a North Carolinian.
I know. I don't like beans. I don't like coleslaw.
Neither do I.
Yeah, but you're not from North Carolina. You're being from North Carolina and not liking coleslaw.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, I actually read something interesting. I was watching a video about people they say, why do beans make you gassy? Well, there's actually a reason why, because now beans are are nutritionally speaking, they're very healthy for you, but a little dark side that a lot of people, that a lot of vegans don't tell you because they often use beans to substitute, their protein is that, well, yes, beans are very nutritious for you, they're hell on your digestive system.
Yeah, we're actually not set up to digest them properly.
Yeah. Yeah, we can digest them, but it takes extra work on the body, and that means your gut has to produce more of the bacteria, that assist your body in digesting food, and those bacteria, when they eat, they excrete carbon dioxide and sulfur and all that, and that's got to go out somewhere.
I heard that lactose intolerance used to be the norm.
Oh yeah, it's a mutation to be able to digest lactose past infancy.
Huh.
But that's basically what beans are. We're bean intolerant, and we never developed a mutation to digest it properly. Which is weird considering how long humans have depended on it. But
Yeah, and contrary to what some people believe, lactose intolerance is not a milk allergy.
no, it's what normally happens to animals once they're weaned.
Yeah.
They just don't really digest milk because they don't have to, so we kind of became exceptions.
That's why you shouldn't give your cats milk. If you must give them, you can give them cream, but not milk.
I think even cream will be.
No, cream. I've heard cream's good for them, provided you speak to your vet and you get the right type of cream. Because I know certain creams, they don't have the lactose in them. So
All right, fine. I'll give them onion cream.
yeah. Most cats, once they're not kittens anymore, they won't drink milk anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then again, having lived with a couple of cats, it is true about that stereotype that cats are very picky eaters.
One of my favorite cats will always be the one played by Danny John Jules.
Danny John Jules, who's that?
Red Dwarf.
Oh,
funny show. Funny, so funny.
Yeah, it's about a guy who gets stuck on
he gets put in stasis, and then there's an accident and the crew is killed and he's not let out of stasis for 3 million years.
So the only ones left are the ship's computer,
who's gone computer senile,
a hologram of his immediate superior, who is completely insufferable, and a life form that evolved from his pet cat.
And later on, they pick up a mechanoid whose specialty is cleaning toilets. And like on the Red Dwarf, they were like the 2 lowest ranked members on the ship. They got all of the jobs that were considered too menial for the service droids.
Sir, just suppose I had a cat. What would you do with Frankenstein?
I mean, the only thing I'm familiar with Red Dwarf is I know you told me that one joke about how there's that general that in one episode, and he has all these medals, and it turns out he never saw a single day in combat, and all the medals he received aren't for bravery or valor; they're just because he stayed in the military for so long.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 years long service, 4 years long service, 6 years long service. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's Arnold Rimmer, BSc, SSC. And that stands for Bronze Swimming Certificate and Silver Swimming Certificate.
Arnold Judas Rimmer.
Judas Rimmer, yes. Oh, it's so funny.
First technician Arnold Judas Rimmer, to be precise.
I thought he was second technician.
Wait, I forget which order it went in.
Yeah, he was second technician and Lister's third technician.
Ah, right.
Yep. The 2 lowest ranked members on the ship. But I do like what Craig Charles said about it, that they had done it properly, going back to the woke thing we were talking about earlier. Basically, from the beginning, half the cast members are black, because Craig Charles is black and Danny John Jules is black. And in all the time, they've been doing the show off and on since like 87, 88, something like that. And all that time, and all the episodes they made, they never even mentioned it. Never brought
What?
any attention to that fact whatsoever.
I mean, it's so far in the future, who would care?
Yeah, well, that's the point. No one does care. It doesn't matter at all. And that's what Craig Charles said was the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Just have it be like that and don't point it out. Most generals don't see battle as generals. Yeah, it's kind of a long way from, Henry V once more into the breach, dear friends. Now they just sit back in their secure bunkers and send other people out.
Yep.
If that's even true about Henry V, who knows?
Now, Arnold Judas Rimmer is one thing, but that Ace Rimmer, what a guy!
What a guy. Such a funny show. Sergeant Major, that's one of those weird ranks like Lieutenant Colonel. Because there's so many ranks between lieutenant and colonel, and so many ranks between sergeant and major. I mean, major general isn't so bad because you're only skipping colonel, but
yeah,
just weird.
Have y'all talked about Ben Gillette? Like, I thought he was like this hardcore libertarian, but now he's seems to have abandoned the whole thing. He's voting for Democrats now.
I think he just didn't like Trump. I think Trump pushed him.
That and he went on that vegan diet, and then he started going crazy.
Well, remember, he was on The Apprentice like twice, and he's dealt with Trump directly, and he does not like Trump.
It's always nice to get to catch up like this.
Yeah, it's cool. Got kind of a full house today.
Speaking of all this crazy stuff about generals, I actually, because I'm into military history and all that, apparently I learned that the irony is that this whole complicated general thing, it was mainly copied from the European system, and the reason why it was designed that way was not because it was the most efficient way to command an army hierarchy. The actual reason was because up until modern history, historically speaking, the soldiers that were doing all the fighting tended to be conscripts, plucked from the working class, while the officers were elite, tended to come from the nobility, and that was a way to prevent a civilian from reaching a high enough rank that they could command an army and potentially overthrow the government. That's actually why for the longest time, the British Army, there was a rule that said if you wanted to achieve a certain rank in the officer corps, you literally had to pay your way through, and the fee was ridiculously expensive.
I just don't get why police ranks are so screwy.
Yeah.
Like in some places, like a police captain is like in charge of this entire section, and in other places a captain is like a nobody, just like a step above constable or something.
Yeah. I don't even know why police officers have ranks. Like, I can understand titles, for jobs, like, obviously a street officer, a detective, etc. But like all these ranks,
it's supposed to be a chain of command. So
yeah, it's a chain of command. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, and there's no consistency between one place and the next.
Yeah. And yeah, to get into those academies, historically speaking, I mean, there's a reason why those academies are so difficult to get into. It's for elitism,
Yeah.
Like, if I recall correctly, for West Point, like, if you want to go to West Point, it doesn't matter if you have the money to pay the tuition fees and all that. Like, you actually have to get a sponsorship from someone, usually a politician.
You have to know people.
Yep. And historically speaking, that's what the whole point of it was. It was to ensure that that people from from the peasant or regular or non nobles if would never get complete control of the army. Like, fun fact, a little thing that not a lot of people realize is that for the longest time there actually used to be this strict rule within a lot of armies and navies that the officers were to always be treated like as if they were a completely different human race compared to the people that served under them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, unless it was to give an order, they would not mingle with their troops. They wouldn't dine with them. They wouldn't they wouldn't sing or participate in any dinners with them. The whole point was to be was to be completely separate. The idea was that it instilled discipline, but really it was really more of a snobbery thing. And it really wasn't until World War One when they started realizing, oh, wait a minute, that's what causes your armies to turn on you. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm, remind, I'm reminded of this old sketch of like, does anyone have any reason why they shouldn't be here today? I'm trying to remember what it's from.
Yeah.
Sounds like maybe Monty Python's Flying Circus, but I don't recognize it.
And everyone had these reasons like, oh, I have a book I'd like to finish. And
Oh yeah. That was Flying Circus. I remember that now. Yeah. All right, off you go. Finish your book.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how messed up some of those militaries were. Like, especially in the movie Master and Commander, where Russell Crowe gives that speech about how it's like you can't be acting like that, your crew will treat you badly. And the weird thing is that so many people in the comment section of that film actually agree with the character, and I'm just like, no. Because you got to remember, the time that it's supposed to take place, and if I recall correctly, that was also the golden age of piracy, and people fail to realize one reason why the golden age of piracy happened was because all these navies had such strict standards, and the sailors were barely getting paid anything. I mean, no joke. That's how many pirate groups started. They started out as commissioned naval vessels. The captain was giving too many cruel orders, and the sailors were like, "Fuck this shit! Let's overthrow them and let's start attacking the enemies of our nation directly and take all the money for ourselves instead of giving it to him."
The U.S. is borderline Venezuela mode. Yeah, if you talk to Venezuelans who've immigrated here,
Yeah, they're thinking, "What? I immigrated from Caracas to get away from this crap."
they will tell you that what the Democrats want, yes, it is socialism, and yes, it is exactly the same kind of socialism that they left.
Yeah.
Which is kind of back. I mean, everyone who thought that, oh, these people from South America who are coming up here, they're going to vote Democrat, and it turns out most of them seem like they're voting Republican.
Yeah,
they're looking at the Democrats and they don't like it.
I have a story about that. My best friend since grade school. I visited him a few years back for his birthday, and we went to the mall near his place, right? So we went to the Starbucks kiosk. I ordered a coffee, and I started talking to the guy at the counter, and he mentioned I was from Venezuela, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Must have been rough. You like it here?" We just started making conversation, and he gave me a coffee and turned away, and I was like, "Wait, sir, your money." And he just says, "Oh, no, don't worry, you're my friend. It's on me." It was real nice of him.
Yeah.
I think Marxism and socialism, it should just be a state recognized religion now.
Yeah. I think
Do you
technically
really want them to?
pirates used to be privateers.
Do you really want Marxists to get tax exempt status?
Ah, that's
Well,
true.
it's a joke, Daniel, because basically Marxists and socialists, they act the same way, radical, fundamentalist Christians react. Every time it fails and every time you point out the inconsistencies and flaws, they perform some sort of mental gymnastics to justify it.
Oh, by the way, the person I'm trying to set up the whole thing with, uh, I told her about the whole cult of the omnipotent state concept. She loves it. I really think you guys are gonna like her.
Yeah, well, it fits. I have a video where I go over it. I look at, the definition of a cult and, what they say, like however many it was, the 7 aspects of a cult, and I just went down one by one.
Yep. Yeah, the first thing the cult does is they tell you you are absolutely miserable and there's nothing you can do about it on your own. But if you join our group, we'll fix it for you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just like that South Park episode about Alcoholics Anonymous, where every time Randy tries to say, "Look, I'm not an alcoholic. I just have an issue with binge drinking. I just need better self-discipline," and they keep telling him, "No, you can't do that. You're powerless."
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Look, I'm not an alcoholic." Well, then why are you here? Because I was ordered by the court to come here. Yeah, no joke.
I like what Stan said to him at the end is like, if you say you like beer, but if you say you're never going to have a beer again, you're letting it control your life just as much as you were when you were binge drinking.
Yeah, I mean, now, Stan is a full-blown addict, although to a different substance. But yeah, back then, it's kind of well established. He wasn't necessarily an alcoholic. He was just one of those people where he just can't control himself. Sometimes once he goes on a bender, he can't stop. And the thing is, in that episode, he does act, fairly rationally. Like, he said, listen, I'm not an alcoholic. I overdid it, and I made the very, very stupid decision to get behind the wheel of a car. I'm not going to do it again. And, it seemed like he was on the road, but then AA told him, no, you're powerless to make that decision.
Sorry to go, guys, but I gotta head out.
All right, see ya, Vega.
All right, see ya.
All right.
Good to talk to you for a little bit, at least.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. Maybe you could do a video on the guy in Argentina. Your thoughts? I'd be curious to hear
like I
about
said, I don't really know anything about him. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, guys.
All right, see ya.
It's a funny thing, and some people have pointed this out about Alcoholics Anonymous. Have you ever noticed that, that they claim we're clean and free of addiction, yet they're still having an addiction? It's just that it's not to alcohol, it's to their religious teachings.
Oh yeah, they're addicted to being in the program.
Yep.
Me,
Also,
I'm just.
Oh yeah, the Prohibition era crime. It's exactly what you see with the war on drugs. We have not learned our lesson. All that problems with the gangs and Al Capone and the Tommy guns and everything, that just went away when we repealed Prohibition. And
now they're trying to do it with guns.
Yeah.
Me, I'm just. Me, I'm not an alcoholic yet, but I have an addiction to large language models.
I mean, that's kind of thing too.
I've been looking for. I found one where it's called Uba Booga. I mean, you have to download.
Yeah,
you have to download the models separately, and I'm looking for a good one. But I understand I'm not going to be able to get one as good as ChatGPT without like stringing 4 GPUs together. But to find a good one that I can just run locally and not have some corporation breathing down my neck. So what I love about Stable Diffusion. I use Invoke AI, and that's FOSS, and it runs solely on my computer.
Unfortunately, I don't have the GPU for a local model.
Yeah. Well, I got an RTX 3060. It's not the latest and the greatest, but it's got 12 gigs. So, but some of them they say, oh yeah, don't run this one unless you got 40 gigs of VRAM. It's like, who has 40 gigs of VRAM? That's when you put in 4 GPUs on your motherboard and string them together. It's the only way to do that. Is that cool? Well, yeah, because usually the ones that are starving to death, it's not their fault. The ones that are doing it all are living the high life in palaces.
Oh yeah.
You think Maduro was starving?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of what it reminds me of what some North Korean defectors said and all that. Is because they were asking, the North Korean defectors, like, were those people genuinely crying when Kim Jong Il died? And they said it's basically a combination of yes and no. No, they were forced to do it. But another thing too, you have to remember is that the reason why the North Korean people are so pro-communism, even though they are living absolute miserable, is simply because they are told right since they were children that North Korea is the only perfect place in the world.
Yeah.
And the people that do point out.
I just remember being in school, and we were actually taught in our textbook. I'm a Cold War kid. That it was all about how Russia is an evil empire, and one of the things was, and Russia teaches their children that they're living in the greatest country in the world. And elsewhere in the textbook, it said that we are living in the greatest country in the world. I'm like, wait a minute.
They don't do that. Have you all listened to any Yeonmi Park? Speaking of North Korean refugees.
No.
She's a figure that made it out of North Korea, and people are dead set against her.
Why is that?
I really don't know. They insist she's a grifter.
Well, what does she do?
She just talks about how awful it is in North Korea.
Oh.
So she's going to get, because the narrative is that socialism's the greatest thing to go, but then an actual person who lived under that society saying, no, socialism is not the way to go. It sucks. I know.
Yeah.
I know. What's her name? Ayan Hirsi Ali. She's getting the same treatment because there's a lot of SJWs, that want for whatever reason, they want, Islamists, to have, Islamism to have an equal standing, with secularism, because, well, secularism is a colonialist principle. Who's to say Islamism is better? And Ayan Hirsi Ali's like, no, Islamism is terrible. I lived in a. And by the way, for people that say Islamism is not the Muslim faith, it's, like the really diehards, like the Sharia law people. And she said, no, I lived under that system. I've seen what it does to people. It is not the society you want to be living in. And for that, she's called a bigot.
Just like we were saying earlier about, Venezuelans, people from North Korea have said, yeah, that was socialism. And yeah, that's what the Democrats want to do.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of that really old video, during the Occupy Wall Street, about how there were so many socialists during Occupy Wall Street, and then an actual guy goes there and all that, and they're talking about socialism, and he reveals, and he drops a bomb on them saying, I will have you know, though, I actually lived in the Soviet Union as a child, and I can tell you the Soviet Union was not this, socialist workers' paradise you thought it was. And most of the people just deflected the question. It was either, oh, that wasn't real communism, or actually it did work, you just don't remember it working because you were young.
Yeah, always.
Wait, they were dead ass gaslighting the guy?
Oh yeah, yep, they do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there was even one communist, who said we have the Soviets to thank for why the Nazis didn't win World War II. If it wasn't for communism, we'd all be speaking German. And he's like, you do realize the Soviet Union was allies with Germany up until 1941, and they actually helped Germany in its early conquests of Europe.
Yeah, they just didn't like it when, Hitler started setting his sights on Soviet territory and says, I want me some of that too.
Yeah.
You give Germans a small thing, like the study room or Poland, and soon they'll want something bigger, like Earth.
Well, it wasn't. Well, believe it or not, because a lot of people like to do that whole joke about how Poland and the Czech Republic, it was actually the Czech Republic first, or like first it was the Sudetenland, then they wanted, this area. I don't know if it was Luxembourg or Liechtenstein. They wanted that. Then they wanted this, and
I've heard Liechtenstein is a nice place.
eh. I mean, fun fact: you can literally rent the country. You can literally rent the country, rent the country out for a film if you want to.
Hmm.
Yeah, all you got to do is pay the royal treasury like a crap ton of money, and basically you have permission to film wherever, as long as you don't interfere with the general public.
You see,
That's why some of the more wealthier filmmakers and directors go to Liechtenstein just because of that reason.
the Kron's talking about mutual. Think about mutualism is like they say that if you abandon your property for any length of time, you lose it. So like you go on vacation for 2 weeks, come back, other people are living in your home. It's like, hey, what are you doing here? Well, you abandoned the property. We're living here now. I just went on vacation.
Yeah, basically mutualists are the type of people that support those people, those bums, those homeless hippie bums, that occupy a building and all that. And when people say, "Hey, you can't leave that's my property," and they go, "See, squatters' rights."
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's terrible because like people have had their lives and finances ruined because of squatters. Like I saw that one recent TV video where it showed all these people that were renting out a property because they were planning on renting out a property, to either expand their business or get their dream home that they wanted, and then a squatter moves in, completely destroys the place. They can't kick them out or sell it, and they're basically stuck, but they still have to pay everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And weren't they like dealing drugs out of the place and all that?
Yeah, they were criminals. They were turning it into a party thing, and the problem is, and the sad reality is that every time something bad happened, it was the owner who technically owned the property that had to pay the price and consequences for all that, and because they couldn't kick him out, and there were people literally defending that guy, saying, "Well, you weren't using the home, so why? So, but he is."
And now I just want to hear that in Shane's pitched up voice.
Mm. I mean, basically mutualism, to my knowledge, they're basically just Marxists who are more brutally honest,
Yeah.
Whereas Marxists will try to pull the mental gymnastics by saying, "Well, actually, you're actually not stealing, and all that blah blah blah." Whereas mutualists are just like, "Well, you're not using it, so I'm going to use it," ignoring that
If
that's
it's in
not
your
how it
hand,
works.
they won't take it, but you set it down for 2 seconds and they'll swipe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, people, but the 5-second rule only applies to armrests at a movie theater, not real life. You've heard that story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with airplanes. If you're on an airplane or a movie theater and there's only one armrest, the person, it's first come, first served, and if the person takes their arm off it, they've got 10 seconds to reclaim it, otherwise then it's yours.
Oh, there's a whole joke about this on Friends.
Yeah.
Uh, it's the one where no one's ready.
Where no one's ready.
Yeah, the one where no one's ready. The episode of Friends.
Yeah.
I never watched that show. So.
Yeah.
Hold on.
You are
Here it
going
is.
to have to explain.
Hold on, I'm digging up the video. I'm digging up the video right now. This should be it.
It sounds workable and can be applied effectively if planned accordingly, but then it's no longer anarchist then now, is it?
Yeah, if it has to be planned, it's not anarchy.
That's the paradox of the anarchist leftists. Yep, listen people, socialism can't be implemented unless there's some form of central authority commanding everything.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
But then they'll
post the
say that
video.
capitalism is bad because of hierarchies.
Okay, then
Yeah,
I'm just gonna I'm just going to put this in live stream planning for the context.
Oh, okay. That
Oh
means it
yeah,
needs
it's
to go
Schism.
back.
That is true. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm upset with the increased cost of living and all the prices, but people need to realize if you demand that your wages increase and all that, you fail to realize you're going to make the problem 10 times worse because see, the reason why prices are going up, people, is because of inflation, and contrary to popular belief, inflation doesn't happen because of high demand. It happens because the value of your money is going down.
Yeah, and raising prices. I mean, in Brazil, around turn of the century, they had this thing called indexing, where wages would automatically go up with the cost of living. And all that did was make inflation worse, to where basically everyone was a millionaire.
Yeah.
They had
Same
so
thing, same
much
thing, same
hyperinflation.
Same thing happened. Same thing happened in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, when the Zimbabwe rebels took over Rhodesia, and the same thing happened in Weimar Republic, Germany.
The
And
opposite
we
happened
still,
in Somalia, because while the government was in power, um, the money just kept inflating, getting bigger and bigger. Once it collapsed and the government wasn't able to create money, the money all of a sudden got more valuable because
yeah,
no one was making any more of it.
yeah. I've actually heard I've actually even heard a similar thing with Confederate money. When Confederate money was first printed, it was universally seen as useless, not necessarily because of the political tensions, but literally because the Confederate Congress literally printed so much of it out that it became worthless. But nowadays, Confederate money, it's actually pretty valuable, and if you own an authentic Confederate dollar, you can actually sell it to a collector for a pretty penny.
Well, it's got collectible value, but I mean, it wasn't backed by gold or silver,
Yeah,
and they were just printing it and printing it and printing it to fund the war effort.
yeah. And if I recall correctly, a lot of Confederate states, even though they officially weren't a part of the Union, they still had, Union currency because they recognized, listen, the Confederate cash, it's not backed by anything. At least the U.S. dollar, because back in those days, it was backed by something. Well, quiet quitting's not helping anyone else.
No, that doesn't help anyone.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I understand. Like, I get it. Look, I'm kind of upset I don't make a lot of money. I do wish I could be making more money, but the sad reality is that, like, I don't want to sound, pessimistic or anything, but, again, with inflation, all that, once you know the root cause of why everything's going up, I'm sorry, it was,
Yep.
I'm sorry, the sad reality is that making more money is not going to fix the problem.
And that's all the problem with people complaining, like, oh, interest rates are going to go up. Interest rates are going to go up. Well, that's kind of what needs to happen to fix the problem.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was Peter Schiff or someone who said, listen, yes, if we get rid of all this government stimulus packaging and all that, yes, there is going to be some short-term pain. People are going to lose money. People are going to lose some of their benefits, but it's necessary. It's like going off of heroin. Yeah, when you start quitting heroin or cigarettes or drugs, you are going to be in a lot of pain. You're going to be sick. You're going to be begging for that drug again, but you have to remember you have to go through that pain with proper help. Otherwise, you're just gonna repeat the same self-destructive behavior.
Yeah, and also the only reason why interest rates would go up when you stop printing money is because government's still running debt.
Yeah.
Do all this deficit spending through the roof. That's actually what pushes interest rates up, and the Fed's just trying to counter it with money printing. Because as long as the government borrows, that's increasing the demand for loanable funds, which pushes interest rates up. So the Fed tries to counter that by increasing the supply of loanable funds, which means printing money. It's just completely insane when you understand how it works.
Hello?
Hello?
Huh? Who's there? Keep in
It's
mind, we're
John.
all armed. Huh?
Oh, it's the other Australian guy.
Yep.
Oh, great. Just what we needed.
What, an Australian?
Yeah.
I mean, we already have Pitsqueak, now we have Sean.
I just
Damn it,
have
Sean.
S ... on my screen. I don't have any.
Damn it, Sean. Stop bullshitting me.
Yeah. Sean's kind of like Pipsqueak, except a lot more weirder.
A lot more weird, and also I've never done this before, so bear with me.
Oh, is this Sean 1M?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good to finally talk to you.
Pretty cool to talk to you and, well, voice, I guess, too.
Yeah.
Did any of you see the chair video?
Well, I'm kind of managing a live stream right now. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we couldn't put that on stream. It would be a huge problem.
no, from what I've heard, SKM, quiet quitting is just sitting there and not doing anything, but still wanting your paycheck.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, people, if you don't want to work there anymore, just quit.
Pretty much a good piece of advice for anyone, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but you'd be
If you
surprised.
hate where you work, you should. But if you hate where you work, if you have other options, you should go for those other options.
And there are plenty of options. Come by my wife's store. If you have a pulse, they'll hire you. They're desperate for people. And everyone's going,
I will
well,
say-
well, there are no jobs. There are no jobs. I'm pointing them at Harris Teeter. Go apply
I think
at
I know.
Harris
I
Teeter.
think I know what's going on, though. I think it's people are like, "There's no jobs where I can live the easy life and make all that money." It's like, people, like, I'll admit my job doesn't pay a whole lot, but to be fair, it's pretty laid back compared to other jobs, and that's just the price you have to pay. It's like, yeah, there's jobs like that, where they treat like one of the family. They've got all this benefits, and they're very lenient on, on things like calling in and all that. But the trade-off is that they don't pay a lot of money,
Yeah.
versus working in a factory where you'll be paid a lot of money, you'll get all these benefits, but the downside is that when you're at work, you're treated like a cog in the machine.
Well, and you have to work your butt off.
Yeah, you got to work 12-hour shifts. You got to work 12-hour shifts, and you go to your boss saying, "Boss, I don't feel so good. I'm running a temperature. I'm coughing and sneezing, and my body hurts all over the place." They're gonna say, "Okay, go to the break room, take some ibuprofen, and get back on the line."
Yeah, it's a grocery store, Monarco. It's one of our local chains here in the Carolinas, and she does the small. It's a smaller one, the local one. She does accounting for it.
You know what else I think? I think I know why, so many socialists are telling people to like go on strike and all that and not quit their jobs and, do something else. It's because if people were to do that, they would find the real reason why it's becoming harder to live the American dream. It's because of the government, not because of capitalism,
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. I hate, like, so many people are like, it's like, well, I want to start my dream business, but I gotta pay all. But thanks to capitalism, I gotta pay all these licensing fees and all. It's like, that's government. Yeah, and like a pure free market capitalist society, like let's say you want to start your own cab service. All you gotta do is take your car and put a giant sign that says "Taxi cab. Call this number if you want to ride."
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that was why Uber and Lyft were these big innovations, and the taxi companies and the politicians that were in bed with them started hitting the ceiling about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in places like Washington D.C. and New York, the only way you can get a taxi is you need what's known as a medallion license, and that medallion license costs $500,000.
Yeah. And the taxis are not nice to be in. I've taken a taxi a couple of times, like once in Vegas and once in DC, and I'll take a Lyft anytime, man. That is so nice. The drivers are great.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about whether or not you're in their area.
Yeah. And another thing too that people, and it's another thing too that I always love is when people say, but what about, those cases where, Uber or Lyft drivers, were mean to someone, and I'm like, you do realize that if you act like that on an Uber driver, you get fired. Whereas a lot of taxi companies, they're also unionized. So just like with teachers unions, if a taxi driver is mean, overcharges you, or does all this bad stuff to you, if you send a letter to complain, they'll just say, okay, your complaint's been notified, and they throw it away.
But it's like, I live in the boonies. There's not even any taxi service out here. But like when I had my heart cath done, they said, well, you can't, drive home from that because of the anesthesia they give you. And but Heather didn't really want to because she was so worried about me. So we got a lift there and a lift back, and it was great. First time we took it was when we got married. We went on our honeymoon. My sister could pick us up from the airport when we got back, but we didn't have anyone to take us there, so we just summoned a lift.
Did you make sure to get some mead from your father-in-law? I mean, otherwise, why have a honeymoon?
Yeah. Yeah, but I've actually never taken an Uber because one, they're more expensive, and two, the couple of times I've tried to summon one, they're like, we don't have any drivers in your area. And Lyft, I always have a driver within like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Apparently they just like working with Lyft better because the terms are better, I guess. There's a lot of Lyft drivers around here.
So Sean, you're apparently your country's trying to invade the United States and UK now. Yeah, through Bluey.
Through what?
Bluey, it's a kid's show that's becoming popular.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've heard. I know barely anything about it, to be honest.
We haven't had any real Aussie shows over here since what, Crocodile Hunter?
To be honest, I still miss Steve Irwin.
His son appears on TV every now and then.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I'm
In
gonna
fact, he was on a Bluey. He actually voiced a character on a Bluey episode.
I'm gonna be honest. The news of Steve Irwin's death really stung.
It's really sad though. There were actually animal rights activists, that were praising Steve Irwin's death because he was an animal abuser.
Yep. I know about that.
Yep. Even though if it wasn't for Steve Irwin, most people wouldn't know about some of the sharks and crocodile species he would cover. I mean, that's actually what one zoo worker pointed out. When debating, PETA, like with an animal rights people that were saying zoos are horrible and evil and all that. It's like what's the worst that's going to happen if we shut down zoos? And the person pointed out, well, if you shut down zoos, most people are never going to see these animals and they're never going to know about them. And if they don't have exposure, they will have no incentive to want to protect them or get involved in the cause to protect them.
Do you know how much more quickly pandas would go extinct if we didn't have zoos.
Oh yeah.
They would
Yeah.
just go extinct on their own. They're having trouble keeping them alive.
Pandas have no survival
No.
instincts whatsoever.
No.
Yeah, like no joke. There are some evolutionists that are flat out saying, you know what? Let's just let the pandas die out and dedicate the conservation elsewhere because.
Well, yeah, because it's taking so many resources from the conservation of other species that aren't cute and cuddly.
Yeah, I mean, I actually remember reading somewhere the only reason why pandas are still, considered, high priorities is literally because they're cute and the Chinese government uses them as propaganda, to say, oh, look at this cute creature and the symbol of Chinese pride. Chinese pride,
Yeah.
When the fact of the matter is, the sad reality is that they're actually a case of it's kind of their own fault that they're endangered because they have very poor parental instincts. They're notoriously lazy. They're picky eaters and will only eat bamboo, even though bamboo has little to no nutritional value.
And they won't fuck.
Yep.
That's a big contributing factor. If you won't fuck, then it's kind of hard to get the next generation going.
Yep.
And don't
Oh,
pandas
yeah.
have a really narrow fertility window?
Oh yeah, that too.
But I just remember them trying to get all these pandas together, just to try to get them to copulate, and they just won't.
Like if I recall correctly, there was one zoo, that was struggling to get, some pandas to copulate, and they literally had to show the pandas basically pornography of image of two actual pandas mating to try to say, see, this is what you do. And even then, they had to simulate it using puppets before the pandas finally like, oh, that's how we have babies. Oh.
I mean, at that point, just let them die.
Yeah.
Yet the big issue with pandas is that they're a bear that's barely actually adjusted its gut to eat what it eats, and primarily eats bamboo.
I was reading something that said they weren't technically bears. I forget what they are, but
Yeah. I mean,
There's been a
I was about to say pandas are the perfect example of what's known as the Bambi effect, where people are saying we got to protect this animal. Well, why? Does it serve the environment? No, but it's cute. Like another famous example being the Harper seal, where people are like Canada needs to stop calling seals. They're sad and evil and cruel and all that, and it turns out they're not endangered. In fact, in many areas, they're actually overpopulated.
there's a lot of past debates as to whether bears were a panda or a raccoon because of red
oh, that's
pandas.
right. Yeah,
They
it said
both
they
have
were a raccoon. Yeah.
They both have the same pseudo thumb adaptation for grasping bamboo, which was what led to a lot of speculation that they might actually be related. That's not actually true. It actually turned out to be convergent evolution. So red pandas are a raccoon. Giant pandas are a bear.
Okay. So it's like panda refers to two completely different species at the same time.
I still
Because
I will say this.
There's no actual animal called a panther. It's either a black leopard or what's the other one that gets called it?
Jaguar.
A jaguar, yeah.
Yeah, it's either
a black jaguar
it's either
or
a
black
lever. Yep. There's no such creature as a panther. It's either a jaguar or a cougar or a leopard that's been born with a rare genetic mutation that gave them a dark fur coat.
From what I understand, leopards don't have very good hearing.
I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about animals. Like that old saying, blind as a bat is not true because it turns out bats actually have pretty good sight.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were just talking about leopards. A leopard never changes its spots. They'll change their spots several times. The spots continually like morph and change throughout their lives.
And for bats, while they have really terrible color vision, their actual eyesight is pretty good.
Well, apparently
yeah.
they've got good. Their eyes are good at motion sensing.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So
So yeah,
basically-
they're far from blind.
Yeah. So basically, they're like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. You know, if you're standing still, they struggle to see you, but if you're moving, they'll pick it up. Although that theory's been discredited.
A lot of stuff from that movie is discredited.
Yeah.
Also, let's be real here, bats are constantly moving, so wouldn't everything look like it's moving
Well,
to
not
them?
constantly. Not when they're hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
True.
I like that
But they
picture
don't
where they
exactly-
took a picture of the bats hanging from the ceiling and turned it upside down, and it looked like they were at a disco.
Oh yeah.
That was funny.
I was about to ask about that actually.
Yeah. Mhm. Yep. I know all about bats. Bats. For instance, did you know that they come out at night and love to fight crime, and their biggest enemies are penguins and clowns?
And if they bite you turn into one of them and don't reflect in mirrors.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie though. I'm kind of afraid of bats, but that's mainly because I'm a germaphobe and ugh.
Well, they are a big carrier of rabies.
The
And
ones
that's
that
what
make you
people
sparkle, you should
don't
be
realize, because they're like, I mean, yes, vaccinate your pets for rabies, but everyone's like, well, why doesn't everyone vaccinate their pets? It's like, well, they do, and if that had been the only issue, then rabies would have been wiped out like smallpox. But it's in bats, it's in raccoons, it's in possums.
I actually remember reading somewhere the reason why bats are prone to having all these nasty diseases is ironically it's not because they're dirty or anything. It's actually because they have an interesting immune system. You see, our immune systems are all about expelling the pathogen, you know, which is why when you get a cold, you sneeze and cough a lot. That's your body trying to get rid of the pathogen. Whereas if I recall correctly, the bat's immune system, it's the opposite because they're social creatures. Their immune system's all about, okay, let's shut the body down and nothing leaves this body. So basically the virus or bacteria, it gets trapped in their body, so they don't spread it to other bats. The only downside is that allows the bacteria and viruses to mutate, so it's very common for bats to become asymptomatic carriers of various other diseases because of the way their immune system works.
Yeah. So if I stand still, Batman can't see me.
Oh, he'll see you. And if the Batman doesn't get you, the Shadow will. Fun fact,
Only
Batman
the
was a
shadow
ripoff.
knows.
Yep, fun fact, Batman was a ripoff of the Shadow.
Yep.
I mean,
Who
hell, his
knows
very
what
first
evil lurks in the hearts of men?
Yeah, that's Razor Fist. That's one of Razor Fist's favorite comics.
The Street and Smith run? Sorry, I've been getting into old pulps over the past year or two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say this. I feel so bad for the Joker if the Shadow ever gets the Joker, because the Shadow's gonna make it so it's like you love playing jokes, Mr. Joker, and love laughing. Well, guess what? The final laugh you're ever gonna hear is gonna be the Shadow's laugh, and that cackle.
Yeah.
I just say
the
if I-
Shadow would have had the Joker dealt with long ago.
Oh yeah. Because to be fair, that is a pretty good point to point out. It's like, listen, Batman, I know you don't want to play the execution. That's true. I'm against the death penalty either, but let's be real here. You arrest the Joker, put him in Arkham Asylum where you know he's going to escape. You know.
Of course,
Yeah,
that
and
is.
if he could stop them, he was like, well, you know, if I kill the Joker, then wouldn't I be as responsible? Well, if you let him live, aren't you kind of responsible for all the people he kills after that?
Yeah, you know, I mean.
Of course, there's also the issue of would he really be the last Joker?
I mean, okay, I get it if Batman like he beats up the Joker and the Joker's on the ground and he's genuinely no threat and all that. Fine, arrest him, give him to the police, but because you
but
don't.
somewhere anywhere other than Arkham Asylum, that has to be the worst run asylum. Because when you look at actual asylums for criminally insane, they are like even worse than like maximum security federal prisons.
I actually remember, I think I told you this before, but there's that joke, about how even the Joker won't mess with the IRS. I read one interesting theory that said the reason why the Joker won't mess with the IRS is because, you see, when Batman captures the Joker goes to Arkham Asylum where he has time to plan out his new schemes. Then he breaks out and he does something new. If the IRS catches him, he's going to federal prison and he's not going to have that luxury.
Well, it's not just the Joker. Harvey Dent keeps escaping.
Yeah.
It's like worst run asylum ever.
Yeah. I think in the comics, it's later revealed that the reason why Arkham Asylum, gets some, they're always sent to Arkham Asylum is because the director is BFS with some of the politicians in Gotham. And it's later revealed that the head of Arkham Asylum himself is later becomes a member of Batman's Rose Gallery.
Surprises me. Gotham is very specifically written to be a corrupt city. So, of course the politicians are just as corrupt.
Which is weird because the name of the place literally just means goat home.
Yeah. Well, fun fact, some diehard fans know this, but not everyone knows this. Gotham City, it was named after a jewelry store.
Huh.
Yeah. When they were coming up with the setting for Gotham, they were talking about how okay, let's they were looking in a phone book to look for interesting names they could call the city, and one thing that stood out for them was a little jewelry and pawn shop called Gotham Jewelers.
Huh. Neat.
Many jewelry stores in Gotham.
Yeah. As for Arkham, wasn't Arkham named after a place in H.P. Lovecraft's books?
I don't recall.
Yeah, there's a lot of Lovecraftian influences in Batman. So much so that they even made an alternative universe on Batman movie where Bat takes on a Lovecraftian eldritch being.
How would Batman take off an eldritch being?
You should check it out yourself. It's pretty good. It's called The Horror That Came to Gotham or something. It's actually a pretty good movie.
Because I mean, the whole point of it is humans don't have any hope against them. And the only reason they don't kill us is they don't really care about us.
Yeah.
I mean, they could accidentally kill us like stepping on an anthill, but mostly they just...
Yeah. Yeah, that's the funny...
And the evil in the book comes from the followers of Cthulhu and all the others.
Yeah.
Because they think they can turn the power of the gods, and get some of that power for themselves. And they don't realize that they're just setting up their own destruction.
Like if I recall correctly, in Call of Cthulhu, basically Cthulhu, when he wakes up, the first thing he does is he accidentally kills the cult that summoned him, and then he doesn't really do much afterwards because, from his point of view, why? What's he gonna get out of destroying the Earth? Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like stepping on a bug.
Yeah, that's the irony about the Lovecraftian horrors is that, with the exception of Nyarlathotep, almost none of them have malice intentions. They're either still basically primordial beasts that run on natural instincts like Azathoth, or, like we said with Cthulhu, they're so powerful and all that if you were to say, Almighty Cthulhu, this world has become corrupted, destroyed and rebuild it anew, their answer's going to be, why? There's better things I could be doing with my time.
They're not even going to answer. They're not even going to pay attention. Yeah. Wasn't Lovecraft racist even for his day? I mean, stories about him are pretty racist, but it isn't really reflected in his writing.
I mean, he was for a while, though. Towards his later life, he did later grow out of it. And to be fair, from what I understand, the reason why he was kind of racist was one, that was just the environment he grew up in, because he kind of came from although he died in poverty at the beginning of his life, he actually came from a pretty well off family, and also he lived in a part of New Jersey which at the time was rampant with crime, and unfortunately some of that crime was committed by immigrants. So having a hatred for Jews and Irish people back then wasn't unheard of. I mean, it still wasn't justified, but it was understandable. And that's something that we're really lacking today in this society. It's not forgiveness, it's not justification, it's at the very least understanding, you know.
Yeah, and
It's
that's
something
that's the big problem. People don't get, like, you read Mein Kampf not because you want to go, hey, Zig Heil, Hitler was a great guy. You want to understand what was going through that idiot's mind.
Yeah,
and you need to understand that.
I found that the people who most often bleed on about empathy are the ones who the least understand the concept.
yeah, you know. Oh yeah, I hate it.
It's like I've read the Communist Manifesto, I've read Das Kapital, and
Yeah.
I can actually tell, socialists. I can actually tell them with greater knowledge what Marx said, and even like in videos where I've shown a screenshot of one of the pages and highlighted what I was talking about, I just get people in the comments, well, you've clearly never read Marx.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no joke. I mean, so many people, like, Marx would never approve of a dictatorship and all that. He wanted to think of the people. It's like, no, he flat out says he wants a dictatorship in his book, you know.
Yep.
Yep, a state of the proletariat.
Yep.
Yep.
That's what it's all about. Marx is not about ending classes. He's about making, his favored class the dictator.
Yeah.
Yep. He have Marxism as a classist ideology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean the funny irony, and I've actually learned this from TIK history, because I'll admit I haven't read the Communist Manifesto, but I watched videos from people that actually have read it and all that, and the craziest thing is that there's a lot of stuff in, Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto that if you honestly didn't know who wrote it, you would have sworn they were written by Hitler.
Or turn it around the other way, look at the 25 points that Hitler wrote.
Yeah.
And if you take out all the stuff about, killing Jews and all that, all of the rest of it is straight from Marx.
Yeah.
Someone read those out in a communist rally once, and they all cheered for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Someone quoted Mein Kampf in several of Hitler's speeches. He just removed, any references to Jews or Germany and just wrote a few words around, and people were cheering them.
You just replaced Germany with the United States and Jews with the rich or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there was that old meme going around, it was called SJWs or Stormfront, and the joke is that if whatever you say about a certain group of people you don't like, if you were to replace it with the word Jew, and it sounds like something Hitler would say, maybe you need to rethink your way of thinking. I like TIK history. It's just sad the way some people treat him. Like, I've used his videos as reference in some debates with socialists and all that, and they're like, TIK history is not a real historian, and he uses bad sources, and their only argument is that he goes against what the mainstream academia says.
Yeah, I mean, his sources are all on the level, and it's not only that, he uses like numerous sources and shows that they all agree.
Yeah,
So he's not just like picking one or two radicals that are going against the grain. That's the established history.
I mean, so many people are like saying the only people who say Adolf Hitler was a socialist are the capitalists who are trying to deny the truth. Yet one of the biggest primary sources he used, which shows Hitler's socialism, is from a book called The Vampire Economy, which was written by a communist.
Oh, SK. And all the stuff in the South, it was never about blacks specifically, because they were just as much going after poor white Southerners. And especially with things like, because they talk about things like the poll tax and the literacy tests and everything. and how they stopped blacks from voting, and they did, but they also stopped the poor white Southerners from voting. And despite the fact that I think it was Mississippi had twice the population in 1900 than it did in 1860, but only half of the number of registered voters, even though blacks technically could vote. And it wasn't like half the population was black. That was, it was all, they were basically preserving the aristocracy. And they set it up so that only the aristocracy could vote and only the aristocracy could, be in political power. It was all about preserving Southern aristocracy.
Yep, and if I recall correctly, a lot of the Southern population was actually against secession at first. It wasn't until they saw the radical political and military actions that the Union was taking that they were like, okay, you know what, we may not support slavery, but screw this. I don't want Northerners coming in and destroying everything. So, I mean, that's what I tell people, and I get branded a lost cause for it. It's like, people, the cause of the Civil War was not the Southern states secession. It was the Union government's response to the secession.
Yep, they didn't want to let them go because they wanted to collect them tariffs.
Yep, if the federal government had just said, "Well, fine, screw you, racists. We don't want slave states in our union. Go do your own thing," there never would have been a civil war.
But the problem is, if the South was their own country, they wouldn't have to get all of those goods from the northern states. They could get them from Europe, or as they were part of the states, they had the tariffs that were making it cheaper to, get the industrial goods from the northern states rather than from overseas.
Yep, and I am sorry, people. I will quote Razorfist because he brings up a pretty good point when he did his video on debunking Lincoln. The South does not have to be the good guys to understand why the North were assholes.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's also why it started at Fort Sumter, because that was the only military base in the South that the North wouldn't give up, aside from this one other that was supplying Fort Sumter. But Fort Sumter at the time was positioned on this island that you got to kind of, sail through before you get to the port of Charleston. And that's what they were doing. They were forcibly stopping the ships coming to the port of Charleston to collect the tariffs.
Also, I don't know. I don't know
exactly what they were complaining about King George doing in the Revolution.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually remember reading that somewhere that when the Civil War first started off, slavery was hardly ever mentioned in the newspapers. It was all about tax evasion, how the Southerners are these separatists that want to destroy the Union and democracy, and the anti-slavery sentiment didn't really come about until like 1963, when the North was trying to convince other nations to still economically support them and to convince people to sign up for the war, because people were like, well, why are we going to war to kill fellow Americans? It's like, oh, we're not killing fellow Americans, we're killing evil slavers.
Well, and it wasn't just that, it was trying to get support in the northern states, because there was just growing anti-war sentiments, protests of the war, even anti-war rioting and things like that. Lincoln used the military to put them down. Newspapers started being critical of the war, and he'd shut down the newspaper and jail the editors. And it just got, so bad that he had to come up with a reason to get everyone behind the war. And slavery was the only issue he could find.
If I recall correctly, Lysander Spooner was a staunch abolitionist, and he was against ending slavery. But even he agreed that going to war with the South was not the appropriate thing to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he wrote a whole treatise on that.
Yeah, and yet, so many people still insist Lysander Spooner is a socialist.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his Wikipedia page,
the only thing they really say, aside from the usual quote mines, is, well, he was a member of First International. It's like, yeah, before the red-black divide, and he was on the black side. The guy kicked out.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, when First International was started, it wasn't founded by communists and socialists. It was founded by anarchists.
Yeah, of all stripes. But
Yeah,
you
yeah,
had
but-
that division between the red, which was the socialist side, and the black, which was the individualist side.
Yeah.
The side where you had Lysander Spooner and Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau and those guys.
Yeah.
I guess they can't really look at look at actual socialists because they're actually pretty terrible people. So they need to appropriate ours.
Well, I don't know if I said decades ago if you were sick, you'd be sent home immediately. I don't know how it works back then,
I mean,
To be
you
fair, though,
should be because you you don't want to get everyone else sick because then your productivity goes down.
Oh,
But
yeah,
nowadays, everywhere is just so shorthanded.
Yeah. I mean,
And
yeah,
if you work in and if you work in fast food or restaurants, being sick is even worse.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I worked at a few restaurants, and not to scare anyone, I have seen coworkers that have come in and they are clearly not doing well. They're hot, they're coughing, they're sneezing, they've got really bad diarrhea, and yet they're still like, no, I gotta still make food, and I'm just like, I feel so bad for people that are ordering from this place tonight, but I can't speak up and do anything about it because then I'd get fired. And I'm just like, people, what are you thinking? If like you do start an outbreak and they trace it back to you, you are going to be in serious trouble. And it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, but if I don't come to work, I'll lose a day's profit. Yeah, and if you get other people sick and it gets traced back to your place, you're definitely going to lose profit because the State Department of Health is going to come after you. And even if we were in an ANCAT society, nobody's going to want to go to a place where they got sick from. If you went to a restaurant and you ate their food and a dye in the food caused your skin to turn purple, would you want to go back there and eat there?
Yeah.
It depends on what cosplay I'm working on.
Well, that's a SpongeBob joke, but you get it. Yeah. When he makes pretty patties and they're a big success, but then it's later discovered that the dye they used dyes your skin.
Well, most of the time. Sometimes it just makes your tongue glow in the dark.
Oh yeah, that's a funny scene. Yeah, it's like, and look what they did to our tongue. Yeah, one guy sticks out his tongue and it appears normal. Like Mr. Krabs is like, "What's wrong with you?" And then he turns out the light and it's glowing green in the dark. Fun fact, though, I read somewhere that actually can happen. Though, contrary to what SpongeBob portrayed, you'd have to eat a lot of it. Like, no joke. There's certain, both natural and artificial dyes where if you do nothing but eat that particular food, your skin will actually take on the tint of that.
I know if you drink.
Yeah.
Well, temporarily, yeah.
Yeah.
I know if you drink.
Well, what?
I know if you drink enough liquid silver, you'll turn blue.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
Well, that's a different thing, but
yeah. If you eat yep. There's also true. I've also true. It's the same thing. If you eat a lot of carrots, oranges, and other stuff like that, your skin will take on an orangish tint.
Is that what happened to Trump?
sometimes his spray tan gets ridiculous.
Yeah.
Someone needs to tell him that he needs to stop surrounding himself with yes men.
I completely agree.
So many people love to say that Trump. I still have no idea where the whole Donald Trump wears a toupee joke came from, because like I've seen videos of people like ruffling up his hair, and that hair's clearly not a toupee. If it was a toupee, it would have fallen off right then and there.
No, it's not fake. I don't. It's just one of those things.
I
guess.
And it's so funny because people are like, but it has to be a toupee because it looks so artificial. Well, yeah. Have you ever heard of a thing called dyeing?
Well, not only that, but a lot of times what happens is you go gray on the sides, but not on the top. And so it looks like you've gone gray and bald and you've gotten a non-gray toupee and put on top. But that's your hair because you go gray on the sides first.
Yeah.
could be growing some sort of orange mold on his head.
But I mean, that's the thing. Trump, you look at the pictures of him back in the day, he was blonde. And when blonde people go gray, you get that kind of weird look.
And speaking of Trump, there's a movement that even Macaulay Culkin's behind where they want to permanently erase his scene from Home Alone 2. I don't know why. I don't know what good's gonna come out of that.
Yeah, I don't know.
So many.
It's just unpersoning at this point.
Yeah.
It's whitewashing history. It's Soviets.
It's
that's what the Soviets would do. Someone would fall out of favor and they'd scrub him from the history books and the popular culture and everything.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's I forgot what the term is. It's like damnation something. It's the Egyptians did it, the Romans did it.
Well, the Egyptians were actually good about keeping the records, probably because it was carved into stone, literally.
Yeah, Yeah, that's the irony, is that, the Egyptians tried to erase, certain unpopular pharaohs, yet we still know about them.
Yeah.
Similar thing
Especially when the records are written into walls. Pretty hard to remove that.
Yeah.
I've heard
it's just
similar...
weird because the gaps in the history don't really correspond to like the people they tried to erase. Like, we've got a lot about Queen Nefertiti, who was very beloved, up to a point, and then everything just stops, and then it picks up a little bit later in someone else's pharaoh, and it's like, oh, what happened in the middle there? Because I guess that part of it just didn't survive thousands of years.
If I recall correctly, Nefertiti, she married that one pharaoh who decided that, these old gods, polytheistic gods, they're too confusing. Let's just worship one god, and that was a very unpopular opinion back in the day.
Oh yeah, the Romans would persecute atheists, and when they said atheists, they were generally referring to Christians because they believed in only one god and not the whole pantheon.
Oh yeah. Yeah, here's another fun fact. That guy was actually King Tut's father, and King Tut's birth name was not Tutankhamun, it was Akhenaten, because Akan was the singular god that his father was trying to do.
Oh yeah, leaders have always named themselves after gods. The guy who founded Scandinavia called himself Odin. King Odin. I'm descended from him.
The king being embodiments of a god is basically part of the course for Egypt already.
Yeah. Well, and lots of other places too.
Well, I mean, that's, historically speaking, that's how you become a king. You either conquer another kingdom and crown yourself, or you're charismatic to convince people that that you were chosen by the gods themselves to be the ruler.
In other words, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords.
Or you're an embodiment of a god.
Yeah,
Only the true Messiah would deny his divinity.
If I recall correctly, a common argument that a lot of kings would use to justify their existence was ironically gaslighting, because they would say, well, if I wasn't meant to be the king, God would have the peasants overthrow me. And the peasants aren't trying to overthrow me, so clearly God wants me to stay in power.
Or God would strike me down with a lightning bolt or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, on the topic of Egypt, pharaohs were believed to be the embodiment of Horus.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
Does that mean...
Listen, if we throw you off of this cliff and you fly away in your broom, that proves you're a witch.
Well, wasn't it Rome, though, that whenever an emperor died, he was supposed to have, ascended to become one of the gods?
Yeah,
Sounds about right for Rome.
All I know about
Yeah, Metatron though did a pretty good video about Romans and all that, and the irony is that he says we hear stories about Roman emperors being debauched and all that, but there's now some evidence that shows that many of the Roman emperors that were supposed to be these debauched, hedonist, that may not be true, because when you think about it, the primary source is saying, oh yeah, this Roman emperor was bad. He would eat babies and rope mothers and kill puppies. Guess who's writing those stories? The Roman senators, and we have plenty of documented evidence that shows that, historically speaking, the Roman Senate and the Kaiser didn't necessarily like each other.
Well, and a lot of it was Christian propaganda too.
Yeah,
And the Romans, I think, thought the Christians were an incestuous death cult, so.
Yeah.
They actually didn't care about them until like the 2nd century. The whole time Nero was supposed to be throwing him to the lions, I think Nero barely knew they existed.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been watching a lot of Metatron, and he's pretty good. Like, he does a lot of debunking about myths about the medieval ages and ancient Roman, and surprisingly, the Romans were very secular,
Metatron's just an angel.
Yeah, the Romans were very secular. Like, contrary to popular belief, like if you were to go to Rome and say, I refuse to worship your gods, gods, I only believe in the one true God, of Christian and Jesus Christ being his prophet, the Romans would probably just be like, okay, fine, you still got to pay your taxes. As long as you pay your taxes and don't plot to overthrow the Kaiser, we don't care, because their whole mentality was, listen, we conquered you people. Our gods are clearly superior. Believe in whatever you God you want, but we conquered you, so our gods are superior.
Well, what they would do, and this is the reason why they're polytheistic, they'd conquer a place and they'd say, okay, your God is just one God in our pantheon.
Yeah.
And they just incorporate that God.
I mean, fun fact, that's the reason why the Mongolians, had so many religions. Like, there's so many documentaries saying what religion were the Mongolians. Some people say they were Muslim, some people say they were Buddhist, some people say they were Hindu, and the actual answer is they were all of them. They were Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, because they conquered so many lands that contained those people. And if I recall correctly, Genghis Khan himself was fascinated by both religions, so it was the whole thing. It's saying, it's like, fine, whatever, as long as you pay your taxes and swear absolute loyalty, we don't care, because we beat you in battle, so our gods are clearly superior.
There was a temple devoted to an Egyptian god in Rome.
Yeah. But that's always the cry of the military, though. Gott mit uns. That's why
I
it was
agree.
the Secret Service that had that on their badges.
Actually, Shane, I could use some myself. It's cold out.
God mittens.
Yeah.
Those are really good mittens, I've heard.
And I agree with you, Daniel. I like Metatron, and the coolest thing is that he's doing a lot of videos, and he tries to stay as apolitical as possible. Like, when he does a lot of videos about the Bible reading and all that, he says, listen, whether or not you agree or disagree with the Bible or religion, I'm not trying to argue that. I'm just trying to put the Bible in a historical linguist context,
Yeah, Christians hate it when you do that.
Yeah. Although, unfortunately, I have seen a couple of atheists, hate it when you do that too. But then again, that tends to come from the more, atheism plus people, where they're not genuine atheists. They just hate, Christianity for the sake of being a contrarian,
Yeah, it's more of a political opposition to Christianity instead of rational.
Yeah, like Sinead O'Connor going, yeah, I hate the Roman Catholic Church because it abuses women, it abuses children, and it does all this and that, so I'm going to join Islam. It's like, Sinead, you don't see the irony there?
Yeah.
I mean, say what you want about Christianity, but it is 10 times worse in modern-day Islamic countries.
Well, at least Jesus didn't marry a 9-year-old.
Yeah. He wasn't against it, though, because there's accounts of that happening in the Bible, and Jesus either said nothing about it, or he was like, sure, whatever. What's the funniest thing I've heard about with interpretations of the Bible? Jehovah's Witnesses, right? I've asked ex-Jehovah's Witnesses why they don't celebrate birthdays, and their biggest responses are funny because one of them was, well, birthdays are only mentioned a handful of times in the Bible, and in both times somebody died. And another reason too, and this is very hilarious, is they say, well, Jesus didn't celebrate his birthday. He only wanted us to focus on his death. It's like, yeah, but we know so very. Like, the only thing the Bible talks about is Jesus is when he's doing something holy. There's very few talks about what Jesus did in his personal life. For all we know, he could have been celebrating his birthday, and the Bible just didn't mention it.
Well, and they also don't believe in actual birth or death as in the start or end of your existence.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
like,
they believe.
there's
Yeah,
nothing really special about your birth. That's just kind of when you came into the world.
yeah, they believe that when you quote unquote die, you just rot in the ground until Jehovah comes back and kills everyone and then brings the paradise back to Earth. Yeah, no joke. Not a lot of people know this outside, but the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a doomsday cult.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, no joke, they show films to their followers saying, "Oh yeah, the end of the world's coming, and there's gonna be fire and brimstone, and God's gonna kill and massacre all these people. So you better be prepared."
I haven't sat down and done it, but Rabbi Schneider has a video where he says that.
Yeah. You know what I want to say to those? You know what I want to say to those people? It's like, okay, so God or Jehovah, whatever you want to call him, he's supposed to be kind and loving and all that, and he cares and wants the best for us. Yep. Then why is he throwing fire? Then why is he saying, if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna throw fireballs at you and make sure you die a violent, painful death at Armageddon?
He loves you. He doesn't want to send you to hell and, have you be in pain for all eternity. But he will.
What does that exactly sound like? Oh, honey, please don't beat me. Look what you made me, dead woman. Why do you think I enjoy doing this to you?
Yep. That's Christianity. It's a whole religion based on battered spouse syndrome.
The three Abrahamic religions in general are based off of battered spouse syndrome. Like, really, the only of the three Abrahamic religions that is at least somewhat self-aware, to my understanding, is Judaism. Like, they acknowledge that, like, if you ask, like, I've heard from some Jewish people that if you ask an Orthodox Jewish person, is God a kind and loving God, they say hell no. And at least they're honest.
I think it depends on the branch of Judaism.
Yeah. But a lot of branches of Judaism, they do say, like, if you ask them, is God a kind and loving God, they're like, nope, he's a strict authority figure,
Yeah, he's a vengeful God.
Yeah.
So
I
always thought it was weird, though, that Christians had all this thing about, oh, no, God's all about love and he's caring and we're his children and everything. And then they turn around and call themselves God-fearing Christians.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to notice the incongruity.
Part of me thinks that's what.
Why would you need to fear a good entity?
Yeah.
I think that's what they were trying.
God is all goodness and God is all love. What's there to fear from him?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the joke they were doing with Monty Python. When they see God, they're like, "Oh, it's the Heavenly Father. We are not worthy." And he's like, "Oh, stop doing that. You're embarrassing me."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I can imagine. I mean, I don't want to sound egotistical or anything, but if I was God or something like that, I would either be scared or embarrassed of humanity. It's like I made you in my image. I want you guys to be proud of your intelligence and incompetence, and here you are groveling like little kids who have been caught stealing from the cookie jar. What's wrong with you?
Didn't Dark Matter do a video like that?
Oh, he's done several like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like I jokingly would say, like, if I was God and they say, "God, please forgive me, I gave into temptation, and I touched myself to pictures of a beautiful naked woman," I would have been like, "Dude, why the fuck did you tell me that? I don't want to hear that."
Wait, why would you need to tell God? God already knows that.
Yeah. That's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing too. They're like, so God's all knowing and all loving, then why do we have confessions?
I mean, allegedly you're not confessing so much to God, you're just confessing to the priest.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard a dark theory that the reason why churches why a lot of religions have confessions is that's basically was a historical way that that the church could hold something against you.
Oh yeah, I was getting
You
dirt on
know,
people.
yeah, yeah. If you confess, saying, Father, I have sinned. I had this temptation where I found this young man very, very attractive, and I gave into the temptation. They can use that against you, so they can find you out and say, if you don't support our cause, we're going to tell the whole neighborhood that you have that you have homosexual fantasies, and you sexually experimented with another man.
Well, and they can also figure out who's a potential threat to the church.
Yeah, Yeah, they can start saying, okay, it's come to our attention that some of you aren't being faithful enough, so we're gonna. So if those people don't come forward and expose themselves, we're gonna lay the full wrath on them. It's
And
it's
I
basic.
and I'm just getting this mental image of like a comedy sketch of someone in confession just like spilling his guts, and the priest is like, I can't do anything with this.
Mm, yeah. I saw a similar joke like that, and it was making fun of the whole thing of the Holy Eucharist and all that, where God learns about the ritual, where they supposedly consume the body and blood of Christ, and his response is, "You people stay the hell away from me and my son."
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that's kind of what the life of
We
Brian was
want
also
to
trying.
cut your son up into little pieces and eat him and drink his blood. You stay away from my family.
Yeah. I know the SCP Foundation made something like that with the Teenage Cthulhu, where there's this young teenage Cthulhu, and and despite being an eldritch entity, he's actually a normal kid and all that. And the problem and why he's with in the Foundation cutscene is because he keeps getting harassed by all these demented cultists that are having blood orgies and are making sacrifices, and he's like, dude, leave me alone.
Somewhat related, but Cthulhu is technically a priest.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Yeah, that poor teenage Cthulhu, and I imagine Shug Niggurath appearing, saying, "Would you people leave him alone? He is not your unholy abomination. He is a very naughty boy." Yeah, yeah. Who are you? Peter.
Are you a virgin?
Mm.
God, that is such a funny movie.
Yeah. Like, if I remember correctly,
I think that's their best work.
Mm.
Some people say it's a holy grail, and I think it's Life of Brian.
Yeah.
It's definitely not Meaning of Life.
I even love how Monty Python.
Meaning of Life has some good parts to it, but it also has some parts that are like, oh god.
I'm not gonna lie, I love how Monty Python unintentionally, predicted SJW culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, Stan, why are you going on about women? Because I want to be one. What?
Or what the woman in Meaning of Life gives birth. Is it a boy or a girl? Well, I think it's a bit early to start imposing roles on it, don't you?
Yeah. The funny thing is that John Cleese, if I recall correctly, he is not a far alt-righter. He just says, look, I'm a centrist, and I'm sorry, but,
I mean, he just thinks it's all ridiculous, because it is.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's like, yeah. Well, let's put it this way. On and when he brings it up, it's like, but why bother? He can't have babies. He doesn't have a womb. It's the principle that matters. That matters.
It is
that matters.
symbolic of our struggle against oppression. Symbolic of his struggle against reality.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing I have with the whole trans and non-binary thing. It's like, look, do whatever you want. That's another thing too that people are forgetting too. It's like, look, we're not against, forcing trans people that they have to identify with their biological sex. The problem we have is when you start saying, well, you have to conform to what I do. It's like, look, call yourself whatever you want, but don't arbitrarily say, because I identify as a woman, you have to identify me as a woman too, or else you're a bigot. It's like, no, I'm sorry.
No,
I still see you as
I can do that. You're presenting as a woman. You're pulling it off. I'll call you she. But, if you ask me what my definition of a woman is,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also dependent on context, but it's like,
Yeah.
there's the genetic definition, which is about chromosomes, the biological definitions, which is about, primary sex characteristics. But
Also,
I
if I
mean,
recall correctly,
you don't, you can feel however you want and do whatever you do to, live your life the way you think's going to make you happy. But don't get bent out of shape. Don't get bent out of shape when other people disagree.
Yeah, I will say this. That's another thing too that I think that's funny, ironically, is because all this SJW talk is actually hurting the LGBTQ community because, like a perfectly good example is like so many SJWs are against, terms like she-male. It's like people, transsexual porn stars and models, they used to wear the term she-male like a badge of honor. They embraced it.
Yep.
Yeah. The only reason they stopped doing it is because other people were going, ew, yeah, it's offensive. I mean, RuPaul used to have a segment on his drag show that said, honey, you've got she-male.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that thing so cringeworthy when I see episodes like that because it's clear that, that a lot of the people behind the scenes aren't really in for it, but they have to do it because of, social stigma and all that.
It's just really ridiculous, though, when you take it to the point where, oh, we just have to accept you that you say you're a woman, and so you go into the girls' bathroom at school, and that one person, he abused girls how many times? The one, and I think it was Florida, that the parents kept protesting about.
Oh, yeah.
And the school was doing nothing about it because, well, they say they're a woman, so we just have to let them.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're supposed to protect your
exploring
students.
I'm actually currently exploring my gender identity right now myself, but I wouldn't go into someone else's bathroom.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I kind of don't like about
there's a difference between saying, okay, if you want to, if that's what you want to do and that's how you identify, that doesn't mean we're just going to believe any pervert who wants to go into the girls' bathroom.
And another thing too, and this
says,
is something that's
I identify as female, so I'm
My
just going to go out here
standard
into the
is-
girls' room.
My standard is I expect people to be able to tell me more about what their identities mean to them than what their identities mean for me, if that makes sense.
I will also say this. Crap, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I remember. Is that another thing I'm also kind of against with this movement is the whole if a kid comes up to you and says I feel like I should be the other sex, the thing they say is okay, you should immediately start embracing all that. And the thing that really brings my pistol boils when I bring out the fallacy with that is they say, well, the only other option is that kid becomes depressed and he commits suicide. It's like, so you do realize, and I'm like, you do realize that's very emotionally manipulative, right? It's emotional.
Yeah, it's not that sharp one or the other. You can spend some time to explore things for yourself. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, even Joe Rogan brought that up too, with transgender kids. It's like, look, if a kid wants to think they're the opposite sex, fine, but, why do we got to take this extreme approach about being, okay, well, we got to put them on puberty blockers and we got to give them, surgery? It's like, no, just let them identify as that. Maybe let them cross-dress a little bit, and just see what happens because let's be real here, people. People say, it's like, oh, but our kids know and we need to embrace it. It's like, no, they don't.
No, they don't.
I didn't realize I was bisexual until I was in my 20s.
There are kids that turned out to be gay who thought they were trans.
Oh yeah, I saw a joke like that one time where a guy meets an old high school friend of his and all that, and it's like, yeah, didn't you used to dress up all the time at school? Yep. Oh, I thought you were transsexual. Well, for a long time I thought it was, but it turns out I'm not transsexual. I'm just gay. Honestly, part of me kind of thinks the reason why the non-binary, transsexual thing came about was because as gays became more and more accepted, they became kind of boring because, it used to be kind of, that underground, niche thing, it gave you that sense of, yeah, I'm a contrarian, but now that gays are all accepted, it's like, it's not unique anymore.
Well, look at how much this modern trans movement actually hates gay people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. It's like I transitioned and now I'm a woman. What? How come lesbians don't want to date me? Yeah, if I recall correctly, there was one gay activist. She was a lesbian, and she got accused of being transphobic simply because she rejected a man who transitioned into a woman, because it's like, I'm sorry, you still have a penis, and I'm not sexually attracted to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sex and gender are two different things. It's important not to fudge that, and Republicans and Democrats deliberately fudge that in order to keep people at each other's throats.
It was fudged from the beginning. The whole reason we have the word gender is because society got uptight about the word sex. Because you couldn't talk about sex in terms of male and female without people thinking about the act of sex.
Yeah, historically, if I recall correctly, gender only applied to grammar, like it was used to describe, here's,
It
a
was
role in society.
It was a more genteel way to describe someone's sex.
Yeah, like a
It
perfectly
also
good
shares the same
They just didn't want to use the word
etymological
sex.
root as
yeah.
it also shares the same etymological root as genre,
Yeah. I will
which
say,
means
and
time.
I mean, I say this because Tim Dyson brought this up pretty good, which made me had laughing. The whole thing about the whole non-binary movement is, I ask people, why do you identify yourself as non-binary? Well, because there's some days where I feel like a man, but there's other days where I feel like a woman, and some days I don't feel like either. And Tim Dyson's response is, yeah, almost everyone feels like that at some point.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're normal.
What does that feeling actually feel like exactly? Like, you feel like what is true?
Yeah. And I get it. I understand that. I'm just saying, we all feel like that. Like, so many people are like it's like, I always wondered, I feel doubt, and I'm always like that. It's like, listen, everyone has that, Everyone has doubts. Everyone questions themselves, That's another thing too I hate about, the whole thing with children, is that people are like, my teenage child is questioning their sexual identity and all that, and I'm just thinking, most kids do. Their bodies are activating. They're not used to feeling these, hormonal changes in sexual attractions. That's just how their body copes with it.
So according to the online etymology dictionary, gender comes from the French genre, kind, species, or character, from the Latin genus, race, stock, family, kind, rank, order, species. And down below it says, the male or female sex sense of the word is attested from early 15th century. As sex took on erotic qualities, gender came to be the usual word for sex of a human being, in which use it was at first regarded as colloquial or humanist, later often in feminist writing with reference to social attributes as much as biological. This since first attested in 1963. So it wasn't used in the case you're talking about, Sean, until the 60s.
This is another conflation people like to do, like claiming that plants have all these different genders.
Yeah, there's just one problem.
Some plants are asexual, some plants are sexual, but
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically fungi have like a weird thing where they have a whole heap of different types of gametes, but they're all the same size, so none of them can be considered male or female.
I'm just gonna point this out. The funny irony about the whole, you have to respect pronouns and all to make someone feel them, is when you really think about it, it's very dehumanizing.
And I think it was CDK007 back in the day, if you remember him from all those years ago. I think it was he who did a video about, because they were talking about like the evolution of the sexes, and creationists wonder how that can happen. And he goes over it, and how he also covered like how you can have asexual reproduction and you can have sexual reproduction, but it wouldn't really work to have three sexes involved in reproduction.
Yeah, Another thing too, I also like is when people try to say, it's like, oh, but there's all these ancient historical, words that were used, and they were clearly used to do non-binary, gender neutral, or third gender. And then I look at the context and I find out, yeah, and you know what I'm noticing about a lot of these words? They're used to apply people of spiritual, titles like priests or whatnot. And if I recall correctly, historically speaking, if you were anointed of the priesthood, you were seen as above humanity to some degree.
Well, and it's like
Not
they
to-
talk about Shakespeare using the word they in a singular fashion, and that means they get to use the pronoun they. But when you look at it, and I mean really up through the 20th century, the only time they was used is when you're talking about a hypothetical person whose gender is unspecified.
Yeah, or you don't know what their gender is because you've never met them before,
Right.
and you don't know anything other than their name and their title, And that's another thing too. Also, is like like people brought up this one term, I forgot what it was, but it was from like Hinduism or something, and it's like, and this was clearly a third gender neutral term. So clearly, other societies had concepts of non-binary, and so I looked up that word, and it turns out that guess what? That person they were referring to was a male who became a holy person, and as part of the process, they were castrated, so they were a eunuch basically.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, a eunuch is not a magical third gender. If not to get vulgar, sorry YouTube, but if you cut your penis off, that doesn't mean you're a woman now. It just means you're a castrated man.
Unless an ox is a third gender of a bull.
Yeah, I mean, and vice versa. If a woman gets a hysterectomy, that doesn't mean she's not a woman anymore. It just means she's a woman without a uterus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sorry, that's what I say. I think, it's very dehumanizing because, it's like a person's like, but I don't want to be labeled by all these standards and all that. I don't want to be labeled. I want to be my own thing. And I'm like, you want to be nothing then?
What you playing, Deej?
Yeah.
Play Tetris.
I actually have this idea for a fantasy idea, where it's that cliche, it's that trope of about how it's like, oh, I'll grant you your wish, but it'll often come with an ironic twist to it. And one idea I had is that there's a character who's non-binary, and they want to wish. It's like, I wish I could be for what I truly am. I want to be this a non-gender being, that can't be judged or placed a label on. And the wish granter turns the person into an odorless and colorless gas.
Yeah.
Because you can't see it, you can't detect it, nobody can hear you, so yeah, you can't be labeled.
Just kind of go with what Morgan Freeman said about race, and I'll just be Shane Killian.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, how about we just stop trying to figure out what kind of human you are and just start seeing you as a human?
As an individual.
Yeah,
Not trying
like
to
I
figure
said,
out which group you do or don't belong to. You're just you.
Yeah, like I said, that's why ironically I find the whole, trans identity and the pronouns movement, it's very dehumanizing because it's not about the person anymore, it's all about how do they identify,
Everybody repeat after me. We are all individuals.
Yeah.
I'm not.
That's why, and I'm sorry, and for anyone that calls me homophobic or whatever, I'm bisexual, so I can say this: gays do not have culture. Gays are not a nationality. They're not an ethnicity. They're not a religion. They're just how your brain's wired. Saying gays have culture is like saying people with autism have culture. Gays are individual people with their own wants and interests.
Wait, if we don't have culture, then where did I get this rash?
You got that from something else.
That sounds like your personal issue there.
Yeah.
You can grow cultures of whatever you want. Just leave the rest of us out it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the sad reality is that, the gay rights movement, it suffered the same problem as the feminist right movement, because if I recall correctly, the old gay rights activists, they weren't these socialists that were saying, oh, we want to be recognized as, a third non-binary otherkin person. They were just saying, look, we're humans, we eat, we breathe, we go to work, we're productive members of society. The only difference is that we're sexually attracted to people of the same sex as us. Just leave us alone, we're not hurting anyone.
Here's how these things go. When you had the big push for gay rights and gay marriage and everything else, you had most gays who were just like, yeah, we're just people. We just want to do our thing. We want to live our lives. let us do that. Give us the right to get married and have all the normal benefits that everyone else has, and just let us at that. You had that fringe, but it was just that, a fringe. As they won these rights, the regular gays, the more normal people, the non-fringe, just kind of dropped out of it because they won. Hey, I get to live my life now. I'm just going to go live my life and be happy about it. That left the fringe. So now who's left in the gay movement? It's the fringe.
It's those people that their entire life is built around the cause and not the struggle.
Yep.
We see. I think we kind of see that in the civil rights movement too. When the civil rights movement was passed and we stopped Jim Crow and all that, most of the rational black people said, "Yay, let's go home. Let's be productive members of citizenship." And all that left, were the radical groups like the Black Panthers that are like, "No, we gotta enslave white people and empower black people and be separatists and all that."
Isn't this the Tocqueville effect?
Well, the Tocqueville effect is distinct from that. It says that, the better off you have it, the bigger deal you make about what problems are left. Because before, the problems are just so big and so insurmountable, you don't feel you can do much. The smaller and smaller they get, the more you feel you can do about it and the more empowered you are to make a bigger deal of it. That's the Tocqueville effect.
That's why ironically, as much as feminists hate it, when you really think about it, the dishwasher and laundry machine were the biggest liberators of women, because the reason why women rarely stood up for their rights was because, practically speaking, you couldn't do it. They were tougher times. Someone had to take care of the kids and do the laundry, and at the time it made sense for the woman to do it. It wasn't until we had all this technology that women could actually sit around and have more free time that they started thinking, what? Why can't I do the stuff my husband does?
Reminds me of this old thing from Reason TV that I saw. It was this lecture about how capitalism liberated the family structure.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, really, the only genuine, understandable criticism of free market capitalism I've heard actually came from some of the religious people that said, while yes, free market capitalism on paper is the best ideal, the problem it has is that it spoils society, and they'll start complaining about how it's like, oh, I'm not happy enough and all that, and then they lose faith, and then they vote in, dictators in power. To which I say, yeah, that's an understandable criticism, but that's not the fault of capitalism. That's just, a fault of human nature.
What is human nature?
There really isn't a human nature. There's just kind of the way people are.
It is a fault with. It is a fault with humanity and all that, but the solution to that isn't isn't religion or all that. We just need more knowledge and understanding of our own psychology, and we go from there.
Yeah, the more of an understanding we have of ourselves, the more we can overcome it.
Remember, a long time ago, people used to think that the reason why, you had schizophrenia or depression was lack of moral spirit, and that you were being possessed by demons. We now know, oh no, it's being caused because of a chemical imbalance in your brain.
That's what the traditional skeptics movement is taught. All of these logical fallacies, all of these cognitive biases you have. The way you overcome those is to be aware of them.
Yeah,
and to catch yourself when you find yourself doing it.
Because I admit it, I'm guilty of it sometimes too. There's times where I hate, where I kind of don't like my own beliefs, and I see I do see videos of companies doing stuff that pisses me off, and part of me does say I really wish someone would stop them, but I'm aware of it, and I put myself aside and say, yes, what this company did is bad, but I think it's better if the market punishes them than if the government punishes them, because the government tends to not actually do so good.
Well, and it's fine to have the emotional reaction, and it's fine to, be offended when someone, does something terrible. But what you need to do is, stop. And when you come down from that emotional state, start and think through it and try to trace it back to what the actual problem is and how to solve it.
It's
but if you just base all of your politics around, I'm offended and therefore we have to get government to stop them. And you're bypassing that whole thought process.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the problem, going back to earlier, that's the problem with a lot of the South American conflicts. It's like, yeah, what the governments of El Salvador and Chile and all that, what they did to their people, yeah, that's horrible. But at the same time, you need to realize communism's not gonna fix that, and if anything, it's gonna make the situation 10 times worse.
And getting back to what we said at the start, I guess we'll just keep an eye on Argentina and see what happens if this new guy is really all he's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
But what's he going to do in a government that's rampant with corruption?
Yeah, I
the
mean,
kind of things we've seen from Brazil in recent
best
years.
case-
Argentina's pretty much the same way.
One of the best case scenarios is if he's genuine, he's probably going to be a fall guy for.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my fear too. Is that he's gonna try to implement change. Change never, but the change never occurs, or it gets stopped, or it becomes negligible. And then when the economic collapse that comes from government intervention in the market occurs, they're gonna say, "Oh, look what he did. He was pushing for reforms, and everything went to shit."
Oh, they did that to us libertarians in 2008, and we weren't even in power.
Yeah. I mean, they did that. I mean, they did that with Ronald Reagan. When Reagan, passed, not even big reforms. Like, that's another thing too. Like, so many people think like he was a big, libertarian president, and while yes, he kind of cut spending in some areas, it was nowhere near the levels libertarians have. And when ultimately, when an economic collapse occurred, from decades of government meddling in the economy, who got the blame? Oh, it was Reagan and his Reaganomics that ruined everything.
I mean, Shane didn't even give him a half a point.
Yeah.
A half a point?
Yeah, when you were ranking
Oh, yeah,
every Republican president on.
Yeah. No. Because I have standards.
Yeah.
There are principles.
I mean, if I recall, like, I still find that funny, like, because like so many people say Reaganomics. It's like Reaganomics is just a boogeyman term because they don't want to blame it for what that is. To be fair,
the problem is they said all this stuff about, oh, Reaganomics, Reagan's doing this, Reagan's doing that, and then it started working.
Yeah.
The economy started getting better, inflation went down, interest rates went down, the jobs started coming back.
Yeah.
People could afford stuff. We didn't have long lines at gas stations.
Yeah.
That wasn't difficult to do. All you really had to do is release Nixon's wage and price controls and, release the government's, stranglehold on interest rates.
To be fair, kind of the irony is that I've noticed is that some people have noticed the trend is that America tends to do a little bit better when there's political turmoil within things like Congress and the executive branch. And when you really think about it, it's obvious why. It's because they're too busy fighting with each other. They're not enforcing these regulations. Whereas when a single power's in power, like if the Democrats are in control of both the executive and legislative branch, we start seeing these economic problems. And that's because they're actually enforcing the rules they're passing.
Freedom through gridlock.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why Trump's presidency was relatively, good, stable economic wise, in the early days, because Congress was spending most of their time, just saying, Trump, you're a bad guy, Trump, you're a bad guy, and they weren't enforcing their regulations. And it wasn't until Trump got out that they're like, holy shit, there's all these regulations we still have in power and we're not enforcing them. Quick, let's enforce them again.
Well, guys, we're about 20 minutes over and my bedtime's coming up. So any final thoughts or anything else you want to cover before we go?
Well, since it's almost December,
Yeah.
It's like,
people should check out the Sarcastically Annotated A Christmas Carol on Amazon.com.
Ah, that sounds cool. I bet the guy who wrote that is like incredibly intelligent and everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Hey.
Yeah. Shane, your wife's calling you. Shane, you get back into bed right now. Well, the other husbands get to do their podcast past 10 o'clock, but I don't. I want to treat it unfairly.
No, it's just that I got to get up early in the morning, and I woke up at the pain got me up at 5 this morning, and I can't take my pain medicine until 6, or else it won't last through the day. And
Oh.
So yeah, I'm kind of dragging right now.
You're a drug addict, Shane.
Mm.
No, he's 50.
I-
Everyone his age is on this kind of drugs.
Especially when been smushed by a drunk driver.
Yeah.
Ooh.
No joke. When you did that episode about opioids and you mentioned your personal experience, there were literally people in the comments saying, "Shane, I think you need to seek help because you're clearly, chemically dependent."
I don't have the first symptom of that.
Yeah. I mean, I put this before. People fail to realize. I mean, I'll stop this. I'll just say this and then I'll end it. An addiction and dependency happens when your body no longer needs the drug. The injuries are healed, the pain's gone, but mentally you still feel the need to take it.
Yeah. But if you
Yeah.
still have the problem,
Yeah.
then you still actually need it. It's when you don't actually need it that it's the problem.
Yeah.
And especially now with the weather getting cold like this, I don't do well this time of year.
Yeah, well, take your painkiller and try to get some sleep now.
Yeah. All right. Anyone got any other thing they want to close out with?
Night.
Nice finally joining in on one of these.
Yeah.
It was
I hope
great.
to have
It
you
was
for
great
more of
to.
these, Sean.
It was great to be back. It was great for me to be back too.
Always good to have you,
thanks for
Daniel.
having me.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to get that group chat going so we can get that whole thing set up.
All
I'm
right.
really excited about getting the ball rolling on it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm still not quite sure what it is, but whatever it is, I'm up for it.
All right, cool.
And thanks to, let's see, who do we have in the chat? SKM, Andy Davis, Minarco Liberal, Mr. No, and everyone else who commented. And of course, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.